There's a quiet question that has followed people for generations, whispered in different forms across different places, in different languages at different times. Why do some people seem to build stability, freedom, and opportunity with what feels like less visible struggle, while others work just as hard yet feel stuck in the same cycle? It's tempting to assume the answer is luck, timing, or circumstance alone. And yes, those elements exist in every story. But when you look closer, something more subtle appears. Not a secret formula, not a hidden trick, something far more consistent, far more human, and far more repeatable. It starts with the way attention is used. Many people move through their days reacting: notifications, demands, obligations, sudden problems, unexpected requests. Life becomes a constant response to what is loudest. In that rhythm, long-term thinking gets pushed aside without anyone intentionally choosing it. But in another pattern of living, attention is treated like a scarce resource, not in a stressful way, but in a deliberate way. Instead of giving energy to everything at the same level, focus is directed toward what continues to matter beyond the moment. Decisions are shaped less by urgency and more by direction. That shift alone changes outcomes over time in ways that are not always immediately visible, but become clear across years. There is also a noticeable difference in how uncertainty is treated. For many, uncertainty feels like a stop sign. Something unclear is often avoided until it becomes unavoidable. The comfort of the familiar becomes the default setting, even when it no longer serves growth. In a different mindset, uncertainty is not treated as danger, but as information that has not yet been understood. Instead of waiting for clarity to appear fully formed, action begins in small, careful steps. Learning happens while moving. Adjustments are made along the way. Progress becomes less about having certainty and more about building comfort with not having it. This creates a quiet but powerful shift. Life stops requiring perfect conditions before movement can happen. Another pattern appears in how value is understood. Many people are taught, directly or indirectly, to measure value through immediate return. Effort in, reward out, in a very direct and visible exchange. When that exchange does not feel balanced quickly, frustration builds. But in a longer view of life, value often behaves differently. Some efforts compound quietly. Some skills take time before they show visible return. Some relationships, knowledge, and systems grow in strength long after the initial effort has been forgotten. Those who seem to build lasting stability often think in terms of accumulation rather than instant reward, not because they reject immediate gain, but because they do not rely on it as the only measure of success. There is also a difference in how problems are interpreted. When a challenge appears, it can be seen as a disruption or as data. In a reactive mindset, problems feel personal, almost like obstacles placed unfairly in the way. Energy goes into frustration, blame, or avoidance. In a more analytical mindset, problems become signals. Something is not aligned, something needs adjustment, something is revealing how a system actually works under pressure. Instead of shrinking the focus, problems expand understanding. Over time, this changes the emotional relationship with difficulty. Challenges stop being proof of limitation and start becoming tools for refinement. Another quiet distinction lies in the relationship with learning. Many people stop learning in structured ways after formal stages of education. Life becomes repetition with occasional adaptation. Learning is no longer a constant priority, but something occasional, often triggered only when necessary. In contrast, there are those who treat learning as a continuous background process, not necessarily formal study, but constant curiosity, observing how systems behave, paying attention to patterns, reflecting on outcomes, asking why things work the way they do. This creates a kind of invisible advantage that builds slowly over time. It is not loud or obvious, but it influences decisions in ways that compound across years. There is also a meaningful difference in how time is experienced. For many, time feels fragmented. Days are filled but not necessarily directed. Busy does not always mean aligned. Weeks pass in cycles of effort and recovery, without a clear sense of progression towards something larger. In a more intentional way of living, time is seen less as a series of isolated days and more as a connected path. Actions today are linked to outcomes far ahead. This does not mean every moment is planned or controlled, but there is a thread of continuity. Even rest and reflection become part of a larger structure rather than interruptions to it. At this point, it becomes important to pause and reframe something. None of this is about idealizing any group of people. Life circumstances vary widely. Background, access, responsibilities, and timing all play significant roles in shaping outcomes. There is no single path that applies universally. What matters here is pattern recognition, not comparison. And within that recognition, something subtle begins to stand out. The difference is less about intensity and more about orientation, less about doing more and more about doing with direction, less about effort alone and more about how effort is structured over time. There is also a difference in how identity is formed around work and achievement. Many people tie identity closely to current circumstances. What they are doing now becomes who they believe they are. When circumstances shift, identity can feel unstable. In another approach, identity is less dependent on current output and more connected to ongoing development. Rather than saying, "This is who I am," based on what I do today, there is a deeper sense of, "This is who I am becoming through what I choose repeatedly." That subtle difference creates resilience. Temporary setbacks feel less like definitions and more like stages. Another important pattern is how resources are treated. For many, resources are seen primarily in terms of consumption. Earn, spend, repeat. This cycle can sustain daily life, but it often leaves little room for expansion. In a different mindset, resources are also seen as tools for creating future options. Energy, time, knowledge, and relationships are directed not only toward immediate comfort, but also toward expanding possibilities. The focus shifts from short-term relief to long-term flexibility. And then there is the role of environment. People are deeply shaped by the environments they spend time in, not just physical spaces, but social and informational environments as well. In some cases, the surrounding influence encourages short-term thinking, distraction, or constant urgency. In other cases, the environment reinforces patience, curiosity, and strategic thinking. A change in environment, even a subtle one, can gradually change behavior without force or pressure. Over time, what once felt difficult can begin to feel natural simply because the surrounding cues have shifted. As this unfolds, something else becomes clear. Progress is rarely a sudden transformation. It is usually quiet, gradual, and easy to overlook while it is happening. Many of the differences that appear significant from the outside are the result of countless small decisions that were not dramatic in the moment, but consistent in direction. And here is where the second moment of reflection arrives. It is easy to watch outcomes and assume they came from dramatic turning points, but more often, they come from patterns that repeated long enough to shape direction. The shift is not always visible while it is happening. It is only visible when looking back across time. There is also an emotional layer that cannot be ignored. Patience with process is often the hidden factor behind long-term stability. Not passive waiting, but active patience. The willingness to continue when results are not immediate. The ability to stay engaged with growth even when progress feels slow. That emotional steadiness becomes a foundation for everything else. And yet, none of this requires becoming a different person. It is not about adopting an entirely new identity. It's about noticing where attention goes, how decisions are made, and what patterns are being repeated without awareness. Small shifts in those areas can gradually reshape direction. There is a final reflection worth holding on to. What often separates different life outcomes is not a single dramatic choice, but the quiet alignment between intention and repetition. When what someone values begins to match what they consistently do, direction becomes clearer. When that alignment is missing, effort can feel scattered, no matter how strong it is. And so the deeper question is not about comparison with others, but about observation of self. Where is attention going when no one is asking for it?
It's a quiet question, but an important one, because attention, more than time, is what shapes our reality. Without realizing it, attention drifts toward habits, toward distractions, toward whatever feels easiest in the moment. And when no one is consciously directing it, it often settles into patterns that repeat themselves day after day. Look closely, and those patterns begin to reveal something deeper. What habits are being followed without thought? What actions feel automatic? These repeated behaviors might seem small, almost insignificant, but over time, they build structure. They form a rhythm, a kind of invisible routine that quietly influences decisions, emotions, and outcomes. The real concern isn't just repetition, it's unconscious repetition. When something is repeated without question, it becomes normalized. It stops being examined, and once that happens, direction is no longer chosen, it is inherited. Days begin to look the same, not because they have to, but because they've been allowed to. Every daily rhythm reinforces something. It might be growth, or it might be stagnation. It might be clarity, or it might be confusion. The key is that it's always reinforcing something, whether you notice it or not. The way mornings begin, the way time is spent, the thoughts that are entertained, all of these quietly point life in a certain direction. So the question isn't just where attention is going, it's whether that direction is intentional. Because once awareness enters the picture, everything changes. Patterns can be questioned, habits can be reshaped, and attention, instead of drifting, can be guided with purpose. In the end, the direction of a life is rarely decided in big moments. It's decided in the small, repeated ones, where attention goes when no one is watching. These are not questions that demand immediate answers. They don't come with pressure, deadlines, or the expectation of quick clarity. Instead, they exist in a quieter space, one where their true value lies not in being solved instantly, but in being carried, revisited, and slowly understood over time. Some questions are meant to be answered, others are meant to be lived with. These belong to the second kind. The moment they are considered, something subtle begins to shift. Awareness expands, even if nothing outwardly changes right away. You may not act differently at first, you may not even fully understand what the question is revealing, but the mind has already started to notice things it once ignored. That's the quiet power of reflection. Simply asking the question creates a pause, and in that pause, patterns that once ran unnoticed begin to surface. You start to see where attention drifts, where habits repeat, where choices are made automatically rather than intentionally. Not because you forced an answer, but because the question itself opened a new way of looking. There's no urgency here, and that's what makes it effective. Growth doesn't always come from sudden realizations. Sometimes it comes from sitting with the right thoughts long enough for them to reshape how you see things. These questions act like lenses, gradually bringing clarity into focus. Over time, without even realizing it, decisions begin to shift. Awareness turns into intention, and intention begins to guide action. So these questions don't need to be rushed. They don't need perfect answers. Their purpose is already fulfilled the moment they make you pause, reflect, and see a little more clearly than before. And as awareness shifts, so does direction. If this perspective gave you something to think about, take a moment to like the video, subscribe for more reflections like this, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might be exactly what someone else needs to hear.